Hi Shweta, welcome to our channel. Xaphal, how are you?
I am very well. Thank you for having me.
Before we move towards your journey and talk about a lot of interesting stuff, tell our viewers a little bit about what you are currently doing.
Okay, currently I am a news anchor, a journalist, and an academic. I work with a popular group, a media group here. I'm a senior editor. I host a daily 1 hour news bulletin. And I also write stories. I write on policies. I write on a variety of other topics. I'm also an academic, which means I teach. And I think that's the better part of my job. I teach every Saturday. I have my tenures going on with different colleges and universities at this point. I am an adjunct faculty at Jamia Millia Islamia, where I teach postgraduate students of journalism.
Great.
The master students of convergent journalism is one of their one of the broader subjects that I teach. And I teach there every Saturday. And I am also a faculty in Bharati Vidyapeeth. So I often go there as well. So apart from being a full-time journalist, I'm an academic.
So you're currently working as a full-time journalist in India.
I am, yes.
Would you like to share your experience, how it feels like to be a journalist?
Well, as a journalist, we are often at the receiving end of a lot of brickbats, uh, and, and sometimes rightly so. That media is divided like never before. There is the left-leaning media, then there is the right-leaning media, and if you do not lean towards either left or right, you get brickbats from both the sides.
True.
Because you would want to take a position on an issue based on the issue, right? So you are not leaning towards any one particular party, any one government, and any one particular ideology, and that can be a bit daunting because, as I said, then you get big brickbats from both the sides because you are not putting your credentials out there. You're not leaning towards one particular side out there for everyone to see. So they're very confused about where you come from, and everybody wants to know whether they follow a journalist who is praising the ruling government or who is against the ruling government, right? They want it to be black or white.
Right.
Everybody wants it to be black or white. They're like, okay, so this journalist praises the ruling government, we want to go with them. Or this journalist writes against the ruling government, we don't want to watch them. But for
Right.
someone who doesn't either praise every day or doesn't hate every day, it gets very difficult. And I think I am a journalist who is not neither left nor right. I feel that I'm at the center. I would rather take a stance on an issue depending on the issue, and would not like to give too much credit to the government, and not take credit away from the government when it comes to giving due credit. But journalistically, let me say this for everyone watching.
Right.
There is never a journalist who is in favor of the government. There should never be a journalist in favor of the government. Your duty is to hold the ruling government accountable. Your duty is towards the people, towards the country. Your duty is not towards who is in power, right? So that is the basic cornerstone of being a journalist. Neutrality is the basic cornerstone of being a journalist. Now, you may say neutrality is lost.
Right.
And you will, and that is right. You're right in saying neutrality is lost, but that does not mean you have to follow the same path. You can carve your own path. You can carve your own niche. So I think going back to your question on what my day-to-day life is, it was that
what
question.
It feels like to be a journalist.
What it feels like. What it feels like is that you're at the receiving end of a lot of criticism, but it's also exciting. Let's not make it all negative. It's also exciting because you're doing the news. You're a part of the news cycle every day. You're a part of what's breaking. You're part of what's happening in the country. So you are constantly in touch with latest developments, and that's a good thing because you are learning every day. Every day is a new day. It feels really good at times to know that you're a part of a process that's constantly churning, but at the same time, it's also, as I said, a lot of criticism on a daily basis.
So how you balance out these things?
How I balance? I try not to pay too much attention to the noises out there. I think it's very important. And I say this with, I think, a lot of pride now. With time, for every young person who's listening, with time, you will become so able as to differentiate between what to pay attention to and what not to
True.
pay attention to. So the idea of compartmentalizing, right?
True.
When you are in the job, when you are working, you listen to everything intendedly, you imbibe what you have to, you let go of what you don't think is important enough. But when you're home, none of it matters. You're as human as anybody else. So you don't need to carry the burden of the entire world on your shoulders,
Right.
right? So try and have a different you at office and have a different you at home. And it's very important, and it comes with time, because I remember being very young and being very offended and being very bothered by what's happening in the office, and it would really matter to me, but it doesn't matter to anymore. I don't go back home and think about it anymore.
So is there any like, for example, if you want to do something and there are a lot of hindrance, how you manage to do these things?
Everybody has the same 24 hours, right? And I'm not a mother, but I know of working women
Right.
who have children, who take care of the children, who take care of the house, who then come to work. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not promoting unpaid labor. I'm not saying go back home and start working and, work for everybody and nobody else should help you or support you. What I'm essentially saying is, as women, we work way more harder. And
Right.
everybody's got same 24 hours, right? So my parents would often say, look at Indra, look at all these women who were successful at what they did. And not because they did not have difficulties, but in spite of the difficulties.
Right.
I mean, it's if it was so easy to get, maybe it's not worth it.
Right.
Then everybody would have it. But
Right.
because it's that difficult, it's that difficult, and everybody's got those limited 24 hours, and some people are making the most of it. So
Right.
I think women like that continue to inspire me. It becomes very, very difficult for me to, sometimes manage my schedule, sometimes manage my day, sometimes manage my sleep schedule. And I didn't realize that when I was 22, 23 years old. I thought, oh, it's so easy, you just have to go to work and come back. But it becomes very difficult for you to manage your sleep schedule, your work-life balance, your eating habits.
Right.
And I'm still struggling. And I'm going to admit it and I think I'm going to admit it with all honesty. I am struggling. I struggle every day. I struggle to sleep on time. I struggle to eat on time. And I'm still learning, and it's going to be continuous learning for me.
True. So everybody or most of the people would like to be in journalism or would like to be a part of, media. So would you like to share your experience, how you had started and about your journey a bit?
Absolutely. I started my career after my post-graduation. I did my post-graduation from University of Sussex in Brighton, very close to London in the UK. So that's where I did my post-graduation. I got my first job, work placement in the BBC in Scotland, in Glasgow. So that is I was very, very, very fortunate to start my career with the BBC, and then eventually move back to India and start working here. In my very first organization, I count as CNBC to be the founding stone of what I know in journalism. I think I had a wonderful mentor, I had a wonderful team, and what I know so far is all credit to them. They have really they've really sown the seeds of journalism in me, laid the foundation, and I've been able to stand up on my feet thereafter. So that is where it started, eventually from CNBC to different organizations. And it's been continuous learning, and I think we learn all our lives. We are supposed to be lifelong learners.
I'm just a bit curious to know why you left BBC.
I was on a work placement. It wasn't a permanent job. For it to have become a permanent job, I would need a visa, which at that point in time, there was no, so I was there at a very unfortunate time when there was no provision for post-study work visa for students. Now they have 2 years post-study work visa.
Right.
If you go to UK now, you can work there for 2 years. But that time they did not have that provision because there was an influx of immigrants, and there was such an anti-immigrant approach of the UK government towards students that the 2-year work visa was rolled back. And so I had to come back.
Okay.
And I didn't even try to, fight my way in or try to find alternatives. because I was honestly really missing being here in the newsroom. I'd been here in the newsroom prior to being in the BBC. I'd done my internships here at CNN, IBN, and various other organizations. And the job here is much more exciting because the news cycle here is so fast and so quick, right? It's churning literally every passing minute. There's so many issues that you can deal with. There's so many things that are happening on a daily basis, so much breaking news. In the UK, it's very slow. So there's one kidnapping, there is one robbery, there's one theft, and they go after it, which is wonderful for them because they're a developed country. We're not, and we have a lot of problems of our own. So I think it was very exciting time to be a journalist in India back then. And this was, remember, this was when this was before Modi government, as a matter of fact, and I was a journalist right after Modi government had come back to power. So yeah.
So do you support any government, or you do have a biased opinion?
Everybody is biased, Panisha. Let me say, everybody has in their minds some sort of biasness.
Right.
It is for them to let it out. If I were to say that I support this government right here on this platform today, I will be influencing the other people who are watching me right now.
Right.
And I have a responsibility towards the youth of this country. So I will never say who I support, but I can definitely give you facts and let you decide on which government is doing good, what government is doing bad, whether bad is too bad, whether good is too good. Like, I can give you facts and information. That is my role. My job is to give facts and information. My job is to not influence people directly or not tell them who to vote for. And unfortunately, that's what a majority of journalists are doing today. Right? They're influencing people. Headlines are very editorialized. Your questions are very editorialized. It's always towards for the opposition. It's never for the ruling government. It feels like you're only holding the opposition responsible for what's happening in the country. So it's very unfortunate where we have come today in mainstream media.
Right. It's important that you're like open about it, that we saw these things and we're not open about it. Like, we are supporting some particular government, or we are just, influencing other people to follow the same. So would you like to mention some of the challenges you're facing right now, or any challenges you had faced in journalism or as an anchor?
There are lots of operational challenges that we face. And then there are challenges that you face by the virtue of your gender, then the challenges that you face because you're working in a newsroom. So I'll talk about some of the challenges that I continue to face as a journalist. There is just too much information out there, right? And it's easy to go on air and just keep repeating yourself, faff about it, right? Like keep repeating the same thing in loop versus add value.
Right.
It's very important as a journalist for you to add value.
Right.
You should come from a place of scholarship, which means you should know what you're saying. You should read about it. You should write about it. Don't just go out blank, right? Don't do that. Be prepared. Be very, very prepared. And I fight it every day. I try and be more prepared every day. I try and learn more every day. And, it's not going to come in a day. I often look around me and I get dejected because I'm like, oh, they know so much and I don't seem to know that much.
Right.
But then there was a time I was very harsh on myself, very harsh on myself. Like, how am I going to survive if I don't know this? How am I not as well-read and as educated and as erudite as they are, as well spoken? A lot of people say you speak very well, and I'm like, no, but I look at others speaking around me, like, they speak so well. How do I not know that much, right? So believe me, every person is fighting a battle.
Yeah, so it's important to be competitive all the time.
It's important to be kind to yourself.
Okay.
And at the same time, be prepared. Be kind to yourself. Right? Be nice to yourself. Don't punish yourself. Just say it was a day, and then there'll be another day, and then there'll be another day. Right? So be nice to yourself, but do not stop the learning process. Do not halt the learning process. Keep learning, keep working every day to get better. But at the same time, be nice to yourself. It's okay. You'll get there eventually. No pressure. You will come. There will be a day when you'll be well spoken. There'll be a day when you'll know a lot about that topic. There'll be a day. I mean, it can't happen overnight.
Right. To be in journalism, there are a lot of beats, and it confused some of the youngsters who would like to be, in journalism, and they are not aware about different beats.
So here's the thing. Beats come later. First comes broad genre under which you're working. So when you become a journalist, you are a sports journalist, a business journalist, a political journalist, and those are the broad genre that you'll cover, right?
Right.
Sports, politics, business. Uh, I am essentially a business slash general news reporter, or a general. I cover general news, which is policy, development issue, and rarely politics. I wouldn't call myself a political journalist, but it's always good to know a little bit about everything. It's always good to know a little bit about sports, a little bit about business, and it may not be possible because business is very technical,
Right.
very technical. And you obviously cannot know everything of everything. You cannot know
Right.
everything about banking. You cannot know everything about macro picture in the country. You cannot know everything about what's happening, with regards to mutual funds, etc. Because for that you have to be more specific. You have to have that sort of niche, and you can't have a niche in everything. So my suggestion would be, don't do, beats come very late, right? Beats come within what you've chosen. So if you've chosen to be a political journalist, then there'll be beat that are you covering Congress or are you covering BJP? What are you covering? That's your beat. Then
Right.
if you're a business journalist, your beat could be personal finance, your beat could be macroeconomy, your beat could be infrastructure, aviation. So those are variety of beats. So that will happen later. First, you decide on what kind of journalist you want to be. Do you want to be a print journalist? Do you want to be a TV journalist? And if you want to be a print journalist, what genre are you interested in? Are you interested in writing about crime, sports, business? So decide on that and then choose your career path. Yeah. And so broadly decide on what you like to write about, what you like to read about, what you like to speak about, and become that journalist. And you can always choose the medium later.
Right. So there are a lot of roles and responsibility. Would you like to mention some for the internship or for the students who are just graduating? So would you like to mention some of the job roles in the newsroom?
Yes, absolutely. So, as a journalist in the newsroom, you can be a producer, you can be an anchor, you can be on the desk, you can be a graphic designer, you can be a motion designer, you could be a senior producer, you could be, there's just so much that you can do. For example, if you are interested in writing for TV, you can be a producer. If you're interested in
Sure.
writing, scripts for documentaries, you can be a producer. If you're interested in aesthetics of it, how it shows out there, what sort of pictures should match with what sort of text, then you can be a production person who's interested in production value of things, how to really produce
Right.
a piece, right? So that is the production person. Then there's a producer who's writing, who's constantly improvising scripts, who's making it better, who's adding elements, who's adding that written band that you see at the bottom, who's adding that headline, who's adding that graphic, right? The person who's making it is the graphics person.
Right.
And then the person who's on air, who does least possible job, is the anchor.
Right.
Right? That is not true. I mean, I do write my own stories. I still write my own stories. There was a time when news anchors would be just very fancy, sit there and read. There was no concept of news anchors anymore,
Right.
news readers anymore. We have a news lead or a person who's in charge of speaking, but also writes a lot. What do I do in my time before I come on air at 4 o'clock and I go live with my show? Prior to that entire day, I'm ideating with my team. I'm ideating on what should be our stories. I'm writing on those stories. I'm constantly preparing. So I'm a part of the entire process. Remember, there's been a convergence of role, Panisha, and I think your audience should know that. Your students should know that. Every student who is looking to be a journalist tomorrow should try their hands at everything. You should try your hands at writing. You should try your hands at being a reporter. You should try your hands at production. So you should know a little bit about everything, because that's only how you're going to sustain. That's the only way you'll sustain in this medium, when you know a little bit about everything. And editing, we often forget how hugely important editing a piece is. I know a bit of editing myself because I've done that in college, and I've sat with editors. I've always sat with editors. I still sit in pre-production stage. If there is a pre-production, now there is pre or post. If there is a pre and post production, I still sit with my editors. But if you do not have you don't know how to edit and you are looking to start learning, you should start learning. It's very important part of your role as a journalist.
Would you like to comment on that? Before that, you need years of experience to be a reporter or to work in the field. Would you like to share your
Absolutely. I
experience?
think it's very, I'll be honest with you. I've had a couple of my junior colleagues come to junior from my college, right? So
Right,
junior alumni from my college come to me and say, we want to be a news anchor. And the first thing I tell them is that go to the field,
right,
start with being a reporter. You will be put on air and said, oh, so and so spokesperson is live with us, and you won't even know what question to ask because you have no idea what's happening.
right,
So I'm not going to say it's aspirational to want to be an anchor. I think it's foolish to be want to be an anchor. It's
right,
very foolish that I want to sit on the anchor's desk. No, the anchor is not the anchor because it's a luxury job. The anchor is the anchor because they come with that sort of understanding and experience. They can hold a conversation. They know what to ask whom, right? You don't want to be in a fix. Don't want to be in a dilemma. And you don't want to end up asking stupid questions because I'll be honest with you, when I look at a lot of people from my own college who are now news anchors, and I look at these very young people who are anchoring, they don't even know what to ask. They're
right.
asking absurd questions. They are, the questions are not properly framed. They have no idea what's happening. So it's honestly, it's not good enough. You're not doing justice to yourself,
Right.
right? So it's very important that you go prepared. You need to do justice to your job. Your job is important. Give some respect to it. Be prepared. Have years of experience under your belt. Go out there, report on issues, and then come back and then anchor, but still go out there. I still prefer to go out there,
Okay.
right? So you should never you should always have this ability to learn and ability to be on the field and constantly network and constantly get more and more information.
Well, what is the difference between an anchor and a presenter? So, would you like to
Yeah,
elaborate?
absolutely. A news presenter, I mean, there's no strict definition. Both are more or less similar, but a news presenter was what we saw in Nalini Singh, or what we saw during those, traditional Doordarshan times when
Right.
journalists would be given a script and they would read it out, right? A news anchor is what we see today. The
Right.
juggling, people are joining live, they're having a discussion, they're taking it forward. There is nothing on teleprompter, right? There's no question written there, but you know enough about a topic to be able to hold a conversation. So that's a news anchor. That's a news host who's a bit more prepared on how to do it, as opposed to a presenter who's only standing and presenting.
So, if anyone would like to be a news presenter, what are the skill set required? Would you like to comment on that? Like, if any particular skill set?
I think number one, preparedness, and the only way you can be prepared is by being a journalist, being a reporter, being a correspondent, being a desk person. So have your experience, have that sort of experience under your belt for you to be able to say something with authority and for people to take you seriously. The only way people will take you seriously is when you say something with authority because it's come with experience. So have experience. That would be my number one appeal to everybody, every person who wants to be a news anchor. Number two is absolutely work on your clarity of speech. Whichever language that you speak in, आप हिंदी में बात करें, आप अंग्रेजी में बात करें, आप उर्दू में बात करें, आप जिस भी भाषा में बात करें, क्लैरिटी होना बहुत जरूरी है. आपकी भाषा में क्लैरिटी, आपके शब्दों में क्लैरिटी होना बहुत जरूरी है. लोगों को समझ में आना चाहिए कि आप क्या कह रहे हैं. People should be able to figure out what you're saying, and more importantly, say it with authority, with the sense of understanding, right? So that would be my second appeal. Like, you start working on your language abilities, and more than anything, start working on your knowledge. Keep reading, keep reading, keep reading. There's nothing more. And I wouldn't say keep watching, keep watching. I should say that as a TV journalist, right? Keep watching.
Yeah.
No, keep reading. Don't watch. Keep reading. Watch. If you want to watch some people who are doing a good job, right? Because journalists today, unfortunately, a lot of them in India are not. So yeah.
So, what is your way of learning? How you stay up to date with all the trends? What's going on?
I shouldn't say my phone because that would be send a bad message, but because that's not how anybody's supposed to learn. I think the primary source of learning for a journalist should always be newspapers, right? Read newspapers thoroughly
So
every
digital
day.
copy you're reading, or you're talking about
I
newspapers?
believe in reading physical newspapers.
Okay.
Digital copy is also acceptable. Absolutely. Save paper, read, go digital. But if you can get hold of a newspaper, read the newspaper, read at least 2 to 3 newspapers, read editorial. Very, very, very important to read editorial. But yes, reading, whichever medium you're reading it in or reading it through, read. That's where you're going to get most of your information.
Is chat GPT is helpful for, writing your content anyway?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm
Are
not
you
going to
using
deny.
that technology as well?
I'm not using it at the moment, but I have used it in a few things that I've done in the past. In a few scripts, I've taken help of ChatGPT. I'm not going to deny the role that AI is going to play in our lives. It's going to dramatically change our lives, but it will require human assistance. Every expert that I've spoken to in this domain, every person that I've had a conversation with will tell you one thing. ChatGPT is not going to take our jobs away, not immediately, but it's definitely going to make some of the functions that we do redundant, right? A lot of research that we do, a lot of hours that go into it, those hours will not go into it anymore because it's going to do your job for you relatively quick, but it still needs your assistance. So it
Right.
will not take your job away, but it's definitely going to assist it, and it will make some functions of your role redundant.
Is there any technical skills required to be a journalist?
No. I think one of the biggest myths with people is that you have to be having a degree or a diploma in journalism. You don't. You don't need any degree, you don't need any diploma. But if you can take a postgraduate diploma, there are colleges, universities in India that offer postgraduate diploma, and that should be enough.
Apart from a good communication skills, what other skills are required if any would like to switch into journalism?
Uh, as a journalist, you should have nose for news. You should be a great storyteller. Everything is a story. Everything that's happening around you is a story, right? Your conversation with your driver is a story. Your conversation with a rickshaw vendor, a rickshaw puller, a sabzi vendor, fruit vendor is a story. So everything is a story around you. Remember, stories are happening all the time. People's lives are part of your story weaving. Getting people to talk to you is a part of your story weaving skills. So hone that skill, talk to as many people as you can, learn from people's experiences, and then it's going to make it very, very easy for you. A lot of very complicated things become relatively easy for you when you talk to somebody who's a fruit seller and talk to them about the role UPI has played in their life, right? That
Right.
will give you a perspective of how UPI is now ingrained into a lot of small vendors' lives, right? And then you can read a lot more on UPI. So stories happen all around you. You just have to keep your eyes and ears open. So that would
Hmm.
be one of my appeals. Keep your eyes and ears open. Everything is a story.
Is networking important in media and journalism?
Very, very important. You need to know people. You need to be able to have contacts that you can call in need of a bite, in need of assistance, in need of some analysis. It's extremely important for you to have enough contacts and for people to know you. Networking is very, very essential part of the role, an essential part of living today, to be honest. It doesn't matter if you're a journalist, you could be a scientist, an engineer, anybody. You need to network. People need to know what you're doing. You need to know what people are doing. Have a very well connected set of friends and acquaintances.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights. We do have some questions. One question is in the comment section. How can a young, passionate journalist deal with newsrooms that kill stories due to political pressure?
Mhm.
Would you
Uh,
like to comment on that?
Absolutely. How can a young passionate journalist deal with newsrooms that kill stories due to political pressure? See, the idea is political pressure is inevitable if you're working in big institutions, which means some of your stories will always be killed. Many of my stories have been killed due to political pressure. I don't even want to tell you what the story was because I think that will make it clear to you why it was killed. But the idea here being, what do you do with it? How do you deal with it? There are two ways in which you can deal with it. One is you push for it, right? You push your editor, you tell your editor why it's that important, why you must do this story, what is the value it will add to people's people's general knowledge. But because it's political pressure, they will not budge, right? So I'm not going to give you false hopes. In which case, you see if it's a trend with the organization, if it always kills your stories, if it always kills very important stories, and if it does, maybe it's not the right place for you because it doesn't align with you, right? It doesn't align with your understanding of stories.
Is a
So and
journalist
find a place that you align with.
is a
Find a place that
journalist
aligns with you.
allowed to, put their opinion online on like social with any of the social media? They can put their opinion.
It is allowed, but you have to be very measured. Certain organizations don't allow you to put your political opinion out there. They can take action. The best way to avoid it is to not add your credentials or where you work on that media. So let's say you tweet things what you like, unless it's blasphemous, it's hatred towards somebody, which I strictly suggest. If you're hating, then something has to be wrong. But if you continue to feel a very strong sense of hatred, please kindly keep it to yourself. Don't put it out there on social media. Hate is never good anywhere, not in your personal life, not in your social media. But if you have some very dramatic and some very astounding things to write, you can write them, but then there may be a fear of backlash from your organization if you've added your credentials on your social media. If it says, oh, you're a journalist working for so and so organization. So I don't keep that. I don't think on my Twitter I say where I work, because it's important for me to be free and for me to be able to do what I want to do and say what I want to say.
So we do have another question. How do you stay informed with the latest trends, and what sources do you rely on for news and insights?
Interesting question. I think it's Bhavtosh. Bhavtosh, I rely on newspapers again. I'm going to go back to my source of information. Newspapers is always my source of information. I read whatever I can on Business Standard, because I cover a lot of business news, so Business Standard, Economic Times, and the business section of Times of India, which is where I get most of my information. PTI, ANI also sends out flashes, so that's also helpful.
What role do you think social media plays in journalism today?
Journalism is happening on social media today. Who's watching TVs anymore? Everybody's going big, very, very big on socials, because that's where news is consumed. That's where news is disseminated, right? So I don't think people are tuning into 9 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m. shows. Maybe some people, maybe old people, but young people on the go, working a job, do not have the time to do it. So social media is where news is happening. So you've got to have a very strong social media presence, which I don't, which I'm guilty of. I'm going to work on it. I'm going to put out something every day. I've decided yesterday, every day I'm going to put out something.
That's great. Anyone to have any questions, they can use the raise hand option, or they can put their question in the comment section. So I think that's it for today. And thank you so much for joining us and share your experience with us. That might be helpful for the students who are watching our show and would like to be in journalism or in media field. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.